tour, I am going to ask you twice to use your imagination. First time right now. Imagine the middle of the 1800s, they have just discovered the largest continuous forest of white pines in the upper half of the United States. The southern tip of it was exactly 50 miles north of here, right up the river, and it extended north well into Canada and as far east as Michigan. That's how large this forest was. It was the forest to provide logs to be brought down here to be turned into finished lumber. We were not the only lumber town back then. Dozens of other lumber towns, lumber camps around that forest. But for a good while, we actually were the best. All the cutting down of the trees was done in the winter time. White pines are sappy. If you cut them down in the summer, the sap oozes out like glue and gets all over everything. So in our case, they cut them down in the cold of the winter. They would stack them on the frozen ice of the river. So in our case, they cut them down in the cold of the winter, stacked them on the frozen ice of the river, and in the spring of the year, when that ice would melt, they would float down here. They were helped along the way by people whose only job was to stand there on the side of the river and keep them moving. They'd be collected off the river here and brought to the proper mill. 10 sawmills operated back then at one time. 8 here in Stillwater, and 2 were on the other side of the river, but they were deemed Stillwater businesses back then. Well over 90% of all the business in town here was lumber related. Stillwater was one booming place. 18,000 residents. We had 13 active churches, 10 banks, 5 newspapers published daily, 2 in foreign languages. We had the largest opera house west of Chicago. But most importantly, we had about 40 saloons staying open 24 hours a day, servicing about 3,500 to 4,000 mill workers. Most of the workers were the guys that cut them down. You could cut the trees down in the forest in the winter and then come on back down and work a mill job in the summer, providing year-long employment. Now we're not going to make it down to the big tin building straight ahead 2 blocks. That was the site of the Isaac Staples sawmill, not just the best mill in town, but the biggest mill in the upper Midwest, the most productive. The only thing original left there is that smokestack, and that is 147 years old. Now that mill with 6-foot saw blades powered by steam could produce 120,000 finished board feet of lumber in a day. That's nothing these days. Back then that was considered exceptional. And with 10 sawmills operating 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, now you can see why we have a dozen train loads a week leaving full of lumber. Now if you're familiar at all, 20 miles up north on the Minnesota side, Taylor's Falls, Minnesota. On the Wisconsin side, St. Croix Falls. They're right across from each other. The river is very narrow up there. That's the site of the largest log jam ever recorded in the U.S. The logs destined for Stillwater were backed up over 3 miles. It took dynamite and 25 days to break up that log jam and get the logs moving back down here. Obviously delaying everything down here a good month. couple more things before we get out of noisy downtown. The Water Street Inn up on the left up there, a very nice hotel and restaurant and lounge. That was the site of the Lumber Exchange building. That's where the offices were for all the mills. It is said there was more money in the vaults and safes of that building than maybe the 10 banks in town combined. You gotta remember back then, everything was a cash on the barrel hit business. There were no credit cards. That building had to have the cash, and it did. There were armed guards there. And again, that building pretty much held the cash. One more light, and we're free at last. Here, I want you to look at the side of the building. There's a mural that I say look at the 4 actual blown up photographs. That's what the logs looked like when they got down here. They were stopped by chains across the river. Then the most dangerous job in town ensued. The guys had to go out there on that cold spring water, identify some logs by a tag on them, wrestle a few to the shore where a horse-drawn wagon could bring them to the proper mill. More years than not, unfortunately, men lost their lives doing the most dangerous job in town. To our left, the historic Lowell Inn restaurant and hotel. The front is an exact replica or duplicate of George Washington's Mount Vernon home in Virginia. The 13 columns represent the 13 original colonies. They have a neat tradition there. Every governor of the state of Minnesota has been invited for lunch at the Lowell Inn. Now you are a lumberjack. You've just worked all winter cutting down trees, but you're going to work in the mill this summer. You beat the logs here by a few days, you got a fresh paycheck in your pocket. Let's hit the saloons, let's have some fun. There's a historic book on Stillwater. The best quote, I believe, says, "The decent folks of Stillwater would lock their doors, draw their drapes, and send their teenage daughters to relatives in the summer." Now that's quite a reputation these dudes had, but think about it. Generally in their 20s, these guys had just spent 4 or 5 months living it out of a campus tent, cutting down those trees pretty much sun up to sun. Coming up on our right is Pioneer Park, a very nice park with a very nice view of downtown. This was the home property of Isaac Staples. I pointed out the mill, the big tin mill there at the north end of town, the most productive. Most of your lumber barons wanted absolutely nothing to do with looking downtown. It's smelly and noisy with all the millwork. Staples wanted to overlook his business, and he definitely did. Unfortunately, like many homes of the era, his house burnt down, and after he relocated, the land was donated and became Pioneer Park. All right, one last time, you got to use your imagination. As we head down the hill, down to our right is a very, very, very large, kind of a hole in the ground built into the bluffs. It's now condominiums. But it is surrounded on 3 sides by 2 40-foot high stone walls, because this was the site of Minnesota's first territorial prison, built in the 1850s. They say Stillwater had a chance to maybe be the state capital, maybe have the University of Minnesota here. And Stillwater's leaders really wanted and got the prison system. They really felt it would provide more long-term employment. Well, it actually did, but after 45 years they outgrew this space, so the Stillwater Correctional Facility is now 3 miles behind us, down in Bayport, Minnesota. Still called the Stillwater Correctional Facility. A couple of our more infamous inmates here, Bob and Cole Younger from the Jesse James Cure over here. Some say they might have had something to do with the creation of the Prison Mirror. Now that is the prison newspaper. And the prison's in Bayport, but that Prison Mirror is still published to this day. Welcome to the North Hill. We're almost to the top of the North Hill. When us locals give directions, we're usually telling you what hill to head for. Along the way, you're going to see many fine old homes, still in excellent shape. Many well over 100 years old. The owners these days of these houses do a great job of keeping them up. I am going to point out a few of them and comment on them. The first one is coming up on our right, up here at the top of the hill. Now this home was not a lumber baron's home. It was built in the 1800s. They are going to repaint it, we heard, maybe this fall. We're interested. Are they going to keep the yellow or switch color schemes? The glass solarium you see on the right was a late addition to the latest renovation. It was purchased in the London, England area and shipped over to be added to the house here. Now of all the old houses in town, this is the oldest house I've ever been in. I was a kid and I asked, why is there so many rooms but they're so small? And I was told, when you were heating with firewood like they did when these houses were built, you don't have a lot of extra heat to throw around. It's easier to heat a smaller space. Guess that makes sense. At one time we heard there were 24 rooms in the house, but now they knocked out a few walls, so they're probably closer to 20. Some of you may be familiar with Jessica Lange, the movie actress. She grew up in Cloquet, that is up north by Duluth, Minnesota. She's living and acting on the East Coast. When she decides she wants her young kids to grow up in a smaller setting, Stillwater was her choice. Where they stayed was behind the white picket fence coming up on our left. It was called the Battle Hollow Bed and Breakfast. But when she purchased it, she turned it into a private residence. They stayed here till the kids got out of high school. And when the kids went on to higher learning, at that time she did return to the East Coast. Now, of all the things we talk about, again, Stillwater was actually referred to for about 10 years as the lumber capital of the U.S. More finished board feet of lumber produced in this town than any other single town. It was very much a point of pride to the residents and workers here in town. We'll turn the corner here and on our left, the Sontrey home. William Sontrey was a lumber baron. He started out with this, what is now olive with yellow and orange trim. He decided 26 rooms were not enough, so he added on what he called a couple of entertainment wings. I'll talk about those in a moment. Now we in Minnesota brag it up. When the winter is bad and you're in a big town, you can stay out of the bad weather by using a skyway system. This might have been one of the first. There was an actual walkway, indoor walkway up above connecting these two buildings. They had to keep the opening down below for horses and carriages to get back to the stables and barns. Now the entertainment wing, designed after the Alhambra Palace, you'll see more of it when I turn left at the corner. Again, the Sontreys were famous for entertaining, not just in the St. Croix Valley, but the upper Midwest. They loved to hobnob with the rich folks. They loved to have people come over. It is said the entertainment wings housed a complete ballroom, a gymnasium, a library, a billiards room, 2 bowling lanes, they called them, and of course your indoor swimming pool. But when the lumber business went bust, and it did, Sontrey pretty much lost everything. Now on our right, this reddish house, kind of an interesting shape, very similar to the light green one on our left. There are a few of homes like this throughout Stillwater, about 3 in a row, a couple blocks over on the North Hill. At one time, they were all boarding houses. You're a lumberjack. You're here to work in the mill in the summer. You've just worked all winter cutting them down. Your shifts at the mill are either 8, 10, or 12 hours, 6 days a week. So when you're off, you're pretty much only looking for a place to lay down on a bed, and you might want to take a bath once a week, whether you need it or not. I suppose these guys didn't fall much into the or not category. Remember a while back, I pointed out Isaac Staple owns the most productive mill around. He lived a couple blocks ahead of us down there at Pioneer Park, overlooking his mill. Isaac Staples was one of Minnesota's first multi-millionaires. It is said in today's dollars, he'd be worth somewhere approaching $50 million. Now, Staples had 2 daughters, and his oldest was Aurora Staples. And when she got married as a gift to her and her new husband from her mom and dad, they received this starter home off to our left, light blue one. It is now the Aurora Staples Bed and Breakfast. Now, my daughter got married last fall, but I was off the hook. I had previously bought her a house. It was a Barbie dream home. And she still wonders, she still blames me for throwing it away, and now it is a collector's item, she says. I don't remember throwing it away. Off to our left, Stillwater's Public Library, and the sign says it is a Carnegie Library. Andrew Carnegie was one of America's richest men back in that era. He made his fortune in steel, but when he got older, he decided to give a lot of it away. It is said he fully or partially funded over 2,500 libraries throughout America. This is one of them. Now, if you take today Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, 3 very rich men, their combined net worth estimated at around $600 billion. Back in the day, Andrew Carnegie, along with J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller, their combined net worth adjusted to today's dollars would approach $1 trillion. Pretty much had control of part of everything. Now, I shouldn't park on the wrong side of the road, especially across from the police department, but it's for you guys. I want you to see the back of the Light Reddish Church. And for showing you this, you're going to have to put up with a bad joke that my boss wants me to tell, but here goes. All right, we're looking at the back of the Light Reddish Church. Now, to pull up a little more, we are looking for 3 stained glass windows. You can catch a glimpse of them, all right? Purchased, sorry we can't get a better view, purchased in the very early 1900s for around $3,000. That was a lot of money back then. Recently appraised, it came back priceless. We could not put a price on duplicating them. They were bought from a little company in New York called Tiffany and Company. And if you look at the bottom corner of the largest one, they are behind protective glass. You will see the signature of the lead designer, and that is Louis Tiffany. My boss always says we should get the Antique Roadshow to give us a guess. Now again, he always tells a joke here, and he's asking me to tell it. Don't shoot the messenger. All right. The back of the beautiful church with the stained glass windows, that's the Episcopal Church. A large church here with a black roof and a very big steeple out front. Trinity Lutheran Church. And located between the 2 fine churches, that small brick building is our local water department. What kind of water might you make between churches? Holy water. How do you make it? You just burn the hell out of it. Wow. Thank you. Groans beat silence. Not by much, but thank you. Now, I know of 4 former churches, there's probably more, that are now condos, like that one down at the corner. Many of them retain the excellent stained glass and beautiful woodwork, and I have been in one of the apartments there, and the woodwork is fabulous. As soon as we get an opening, I'm going to drive halfway up the hill and see if I can get a cooling breeze for you. That's what you want. finally turn the corner, I can welcome you to Stillwater's South Hill. On average, South Hill homes are older. If you build a house today, people want to put a patio on or a deck, maybe both. But back in the day, take a look to your right at the two neat wraparound porches. Sit outside with a glass of lemonade at night. Remember, before television and before air conditioning. Plus, you might learn what's going on from your neighbor on a porch. We figure 8 out of 10 houses on the South Hill still have a porch. A while back, I said Isaac Staples had 2 daughters. The youngest, still don't know her name, but the youngest daughter, she got married. And on her wedding day, as a gift from her parents to her new husband and herself, they received this fabulous White House to our left. Now that's nothing like Aurora's. It is said she married someone Mom and Dad were not fond of one lick. She married a common lumberjack. Still had to get her a house though. Lumber Baron John O'Brien had the house to our left built. It is now the Rivertown Inn Bed and Breakfast. All the guest rooms in the inn are named after a famous author. And if you look down the driveway to our left past the parked cars, you will see a maroon carriage house. The inside, just the inside, is designed after a railroad car from Murder on the Orient Express. I have not been inside, but every summer someone who has will remind me that if you are inside, you'd swear you're in an actual railroad car. I think there's sleeper berths. We're going to get a nice view of the river from up here. The St. Croix originates in Danbury, Wisconsin. It flows 70 miles to the Hastings-Prescott area where it empties into the mighty Mississippi. It's federally protected waterway. No more building on the shores of the St. Croix. Some people say there's another nice house up here. Might be the one on our left coming up.
Really nice.
This one was completely repainted about 8 years ago. Took a while to do it. Obviously what it has over the others is the view. Now this is not the steepest hill in town. We will do that one later. When we got this trolley last fall, we were worried that when we go down here and turn up the hill to our right that we might bottom out. We were correct. I turned a factory fresh round tailpipe into something that looked like a half a deck of cards. But we moved the tailpipe off to the side. If I go slow enough, we now make it. Well, listen up, everyone. This is the straw boss talking. I'm one of the men in charge of a lumber camp up north. It may be the middle of winter, but it's 5:30 in the morning and I see daylight. We're going to have breakfast, hop on a wagon, and get back to the forest. You're going to work for me, cutting down trees. 6 days a week, pretty much sun up to sundown, and I'm going to pay you the tidy sum of 25 cents an hour, and darn it, I want my money's worth. It is said that some of those straw bosses, the men in charge of the camps, some of those camps approached 2,000 lumberjacks in a single camp. Now I can't pull over there, and I usually comment about the house right here off to our left across the street. Out front is a white pine tree. Millions of those were floated down the St. Croix River to Stillwater to be turned into finished lumber. On average, the height of the ones they cut down were twice as high as that one. Behind it is the Ann Bean Bed and Breakfast, a former lumber baron's home built in 1880. It is 144 years old, still in pretty nice shape. Many of our former lumber barons' homes are as beautiful today as they were then, and as beautiful inside as outside. Coming up on our right after we turn the corner here, St. Mary's Catholic Church. Now, this was the German Catholic Church back in the day. Remember, our immigrants did not always speak English. Off to our left is a private residence, but at one time it was the convent for the church. And back to the right, the small reddish brick building, it says built in 1888. The church's rectory is still used by the priest that served this church and another one a few blocks away. When we turn the corner, there's always cars parked on the left side, so we always have to watch out for attack branches. The first one is coming up right here on your left, and now it's pretty much the right side. Please watch out for the branches. And there's a new pothole here that we hit for the first time today. Right there. Hey, we gotta stay entertained. It was the first time. All right, earlier I said a lot of our former condos, our former churches are condominiums, as is this one. Originally, this was the German neighborhood Lutheran church, Salem Lutheran. A lot of ethnic neighborhoods back in the day. Coming up on our right behind the brick block wall here, that house was not a lumber baron's home, but it used to have a better view of downtown because it was a story and a half taller. But it was struck by lightning. They could not save the top floor. They recapped it at its current height. A couple interesting facts. When that house was built, it had 88 windows, and not one metal nail or screw was used in the construction. Only wooden pegs and dowels. This was a lumber town. Pretty much all the scrap wood you could use. Coming up on our right, the historic Washington County Courthouse is the oldest standing courthouse in the state. No longer used as a working courthouse. It's now used for gatherings, celebrations, and receptions. To our left is our Veterans Memorial. Any veterans on board, thank you for your service. And as we get to the corner here, when we get to the corner, we look up the hill to the right, a block up. The largest church in town, St. Michael's Catholic Church. That was the Irish neighborhood church in the day. Now, many of you are familiar with the song White Christmas, made famous by, of course, Bing Crosby. I am not going to tell you that Bing was ever here. I have no proof one way or another. But as a young girl, Bing Crosby's mom actually lived for a while a block and a half east. She was a young girl. Her maiden name was Carrington, and she attended Mass at St. Mike's. A while back I said your lumber barons wanted nothing to do with downtown. It's smelly and noisy, all the sawmill business, 24 hours a day. Some people wanted to overlook the river. The homes in front of us on the other side there are owned by riverboat owners, riverboat captains. They wanted to keep an eye on their ships anchored below. There was a steamship called the Capital. It came up from the St. Louis, Missouri area many years in a row in the early 1900s, bringing usually 100 to 150 passengers for a 4 to 6 week stay in the valley. Now I'm going to turn around here. We are at the top of the Main Street stairs. As I turn around, And I have you look upriver and you can see some very small islands in the middle. That's where the chains went across. There are photographs from this area where you do not see water north of those islands. Every spring completely covered by logs before they were hauled off. In 1898 we set what was then a record, 160 million finished board feet of lumber. But less than a dozen years later, Stillwater choked on its own sawdust. People left in droves. The population went from 18,000 to about 6,000. The reason being there were no more jobs. And the reason why? When they cut down all those trees they never considered replanting. And a forest estimated to last over 100 years was gone in about half that time. So was pretty much the business of Stillwater. So we suffered through some more tough times. World War I, the Great Depression, World War II. But in the 1950s and 60s, we bounced back. People saw the beauty of the valley and bought up the old homes. The downtown started that touristy thing we're still known for today. So that's pretty much the lumber story of our tour. Stillwater from boom to bust to back where we are again. 18,000. Can't get much bigger. We're kind of locked in. Now this is the steepest hill in town, called Chilkoot. Named after the Chilkoot Pass in Alaska. It is the only road we do not plow in the winter. It is barricaded off. They had a professional bike race here, I think in the 1990s. I remember watching it. The feature race was a 30-mile race. They used Chilkoot as part of their race course. They came up Chilkoot 15 times. And I know they were going up a little faster than we are creeping down.
How many stairs are on the main three stairs?
I think 157. Don't worry about a thing. We're getting the brakes finally looked at Tuesday, so we're good to go. Now remember the yellow house with the glass solarium? They were very instrumental in the creation of Teddy Bear Park, the favorite park for our youngest, off to the right. On a nice Saturday, sometimes there's 150 1 to 6 year olds having fun at Teddy Bear Park. Everyone loves it but the grandparents who have to walk them up this hill to get to Teddy Bear Park. As we come towards the end of the tour, I always like to point out, this year the water might not have reached its highest mark this year. Last year we built our sandbag dike to keep the floodwaters out. Last year the water made it up to 1 foot below the old lift bridge. The all-time record in 1965, the water made it up to the top of the white railing on the old lift bridge. In 1965, they brought down prisoners from Bayport. They closed the high school for a few days. They worked day and night for 3 days and nights to somehow try to erect that sandbag dike high enough to keep the floodwaters out of downtown Stillwater. It had very limited success. Pretty much every basement ended up completely flooded. Boy, this guy is helping me out much here. Can you take a look out the back and see how close I am? I'm going to have to do a 5-point turn instead of a 3-point turn. Tell me when I got about 4 feet. Let's see if I can do it in one more swoop. Still good? think I got it. That's too much work. All right, that's going to pretty much wrap up our tour. Thank you for riding along. Again, if you still have any questions, I can try to answer them. Otherwise, 2 final thoughts. 1, please enjoy the rest of your day in Stillwater. And if any of you bought our water bottles we sell at the Trolley office, we would love to get them back because we refill them at night from the river to sell for tomorrow's tours. Thank you.